All right, so to get started here, the first thing that I want to take a look at is the basics of prompt engineering, and I want to start off with what in theory should be a pretty simple question, and that is, what is prompt engineering anyway? So the fact is that if you search for books on how to deal with other humans, right? If you look for some of the most famous books, such as How to Win Friends and Influence People, The Psychology of Persuasion, things like that, you're going to find that there's an awful lot of books out there on the topic, right? There's lots of information that humans have compiled over time on how to deal with other people most effectively. So the fact is that up until very recently, this has been really the only main interaction, the only main non-deterministic interaction, we'll say, that we've had to deal with, right? Humans are definitely quite complex to interact with, but the interesting thing is that in recent years, with the rise of AI, and especially generative AI, and conversational generative AI like ChatGPT, we're now faced with the challenge of communicating in the most effective way possible with computers. Now, this is fundamentally different than writing computer programs because, for the most part, computer programs are deterministic. In other words, with a computer program, if you're not getting the output that you're looking for, it's a problem with the code that you wrote, right? And while definitely with prompt engineering, if you're not getting the output that you're looking for, there's a lot of things that you can do that can influence the results, but it's a much more sort of fuzzy process, right? And so prompt engineering, while it uses the word engineering, is really sort of half science, half art. And that's kind of what I want to get across to you, at least just in these initial few videos where we talk about the basics of prompt engineering. So to get started here with a basic definition, let's just use this definition for now. Prompt engineering is basically crafting the inputs that we enter into generative AI in order to maximize the effectiveness of the outputs that it gives us, right? So more specifically, AI systems that are based on natural language processing really require a little bit of finesse, so to speak, when we deal with them. And that's where, especially in the field of LLMs, where communication is primarily through text, the input that we give to an AI model, right, the prompt, really plays a huge role in determining the quality and relevance of the response that we get. All right, so ultimately, prompt engineering it isn't just about telling AI what to do, it's about doing it in a way that gets the best possible response, right? Think of it like giving directions. The clearer and more precise you are when you're giving someone directions on how to get from point A to point B, the more likely it is that the person you're giving directions to is going to get where they're going. Now, can the person get where they're going if you give bad directions? That's absolutely possible, right? The person might still get where they're going even if the directions that you give are subpar, but that's kind of what we're going for here in both situations, is we want to maximize the chances of getting the result that we're looking for. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about the role in AI in general of this new field of prompt engineering. So prompt engineering plays two major roles in the world of AI. The first thing is that it makes AI smarter, and I'm using air quotes there intentionally because, it's still kind of on the fence whether we can actually call these things smart or whether they're just doing a very good job of fooling us into thinking so. But anyway, prompt engineering makes AI, it allows AI to pass as smarter, right? In other words, when you give AI a well thought out prompt, in other words, similar to well thought out, well structured directions in the example that we just went through, it's going to be able to give you a much better result. And usually in the case of ChatGPT, that's going to take the form of a more accurate and on point answer. So again, if if you were to give directions to someone and those are bad directions and the person gets lost, you might be tempted to think that that person isn't super intelligent, right? But the fact is that in that situation, it's really just the directions that you gave that were suboptimal. So that's really the kind of the way to think about prompt engineering. I know plenty of people personally who have given ChatGPT or some other LLM a try, and they ask it a question and they're underwhelmed by the response, right? They might ask it something like, what's the stock market going to do tomorrow? And things like that are just, those are subpar prompts. And so when people get answers that are less than satisfactory after they give those prompts, they tend to think that the LLM, right, the technology is not very good, which is a very mistaken assumption in most cases. So that's really the first big role that prompt engineering plays, is that it's helping humans to communicate with AI in the most effective way possible so that we can get it to do what we want. So the second major role that prompt engineering plays in just working with AI in general is that it can tend to make the process of working with AI much faster and more efficient. And you'll see this once you get the hang of writing good prompts. You can often get the answer or the result that you're looking for in a single try versus, if you give it subpar prompts, you may have to enter in several prompts or try several times in order to guide the generative AI technology, right, the LLM model, to the solution that you're looking for. So that's the second big role that it plays, is just making that process of working with AI and getting the results that we're looking for much faster. And this is really, just as a side note here, this is really going to become much more important as AI becomes more and more prevalent in your day-to-day life, right? The ability to use AI efficiently is going to become, I would say it's going to be pretty similar to what the ability to use computers was maybe 10, 20 years ago, right? You could still get by without it at that point, but really the people who really excelled both professionally and in the technology world, of course, were the ones who really understood how to use it efficiently. And now that we have these exciting AI tools at our disposal, like ChatGPT, ultimately, the efficiency that you're able to bring to the conversation there is going to make a huge difference in where you go professionally when working with these tools. So that's just a side note that I wanted to add into there. All right, so let's move on to the third bullet point here. Let's talk about the importance here of prompt engineering in navigating AI limitations and capabilities. All right, so another key part of prompt engineering is about knowing what AI models, right, such as ChatGPT, can and can't do. The fact is that no AI is ever going to be perfect, whatever that would even mean in the first place, and many times you'll find that they struggle with things like understanding context or handling vague questions. At least they tend not to give you the response that you're looking for in those situations, right? Now, by learning to use the right prompts, you can really tend to avoid these issues and get more reliable results. So besides this, it really gives us a way, prompt engineering gives us a way to kind of push the limits of generative AI and discover new things that it can do that we might not have thought of before, or just figure out better ways, more efficient ways of interacting with it. So the last bullet point here is some potential applications of generative AI. Right now, people have been working with tools like ChatGPT primarily like a toy, right? They've been kind of playing around with it. They've been using it to write maybe things like fan fiction for their favorite novels, things like that. But the fact is that the real applications, the real useful, revolutionary applications of generative AI are really just starting to appear. And some of these potential applications are very exciting. Now, first of all, we obviously have chatbots. The potential of using these LLMs in chatbots is pretty exciting. because it helps us make conversations that are much more natural and useful. We're going to talk about the evolution of chatbots over the past few decades in more detail shortly, but really what prompt engineering allows us to do is set up these models, these chatbots based on these models, that is, so that they can have the most effective conversations possible with whoever our users are, right? So instead of having the basic, choose one of these things, or like looking for specific keywords in a user's message in order to forward them to the right place, we can actually have our chatbots based on these models have pretty authentic interactions with our users, which is a pretty exciting possibility for companies who are struggling to find enough customer service agents to service all of their customers' messages. All right. Now, chatbots is really the most obvious application here, but there are also plenty of other exciting applications. In creative areas, ChatGPT and other models have been used to come up with unique and interesting writing, and more recently, interesting visuals, right? You can actually generate images, as we're going to take a look at a little bit later. And this can also be helpful, that is, in more technical stuff like coding, data analysis, and even solving fairly complex problems. So really, as I said already, we're just getting started with the potential revolutionary applications of these technologies. So ultimately, the takeaway from this slide here and from this video is that prompt engineering is just an incredibly important part of working with AI nowadays, and will continue to become more and more important as we head into the future. Prompt engineering is really about combining tech know-how with creativity and clever communication tactics. And again, as I've already said, as AI becomes a bigger part of our lives, the skill of writing the perfect prompts, right, the prompts that get you what you want, ideally the first time, is going to become more and more important. So ultimately, the takeaway here is that it's not just what you ask AI to do anymore, but how you ask it that can make all the difference.